Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your patience as we get started. And welcome to this afternoon PERG happy hour, Double the Line, Fostering Diversity and Inclusion in the Commercial World. Our guest today will be Tabitha Mason Elliott. She is a partner and the head of production at Bark Bark, which is an award-winning production company specializing in branded content, promos, and commercials. And she's also the president of the Southeast chapter of AICP, as well as chair of the AICP's Equity and Inclusion Committee, and is overseeing the implementation of several DEI initiatives across the commercial industry. Now, we're especially appreciative of our annual sponsors, and this year when companies have had to take a hard look at their marketing dollars, it really means a lot to us. So let's thank our annual sponsors, ARI, Camera One, Dynamic, Intella Event, and Taylor Associates. We really appreciate your support in making these things happen, and we would like to thank today's event sponsors, Light Gear and the Camera Division. So that's enough from me. Let's get started, and please welcome Tabitha Mason Elliott.
Hi, how is everyone? Just waving because, we don't get to do that as often as we like. So one, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you about Double the Line and what the AICP has started doing in order to facilitate diversity across our industry. Double the Line is actually the brainchild of Allie Brown of Pretty Bird, who had started doing this on her own with her clients in the wake of everything that's happened this year with all the civil unrest. So many of her clients were asking, what can they do? How can they change our industry? Everyone wants to make a contribution. And she just started doing this. Well, Double the Line, which is, if you worked in commercials or pretty much any form of media where you've seen our budgets, and they are all line item budgets. Every job has a line specific to that. And the idea there is that you could double a position or a role in the budget. The client would pay for the doubling, and we would work with someone from another part of our industry doing that job, let's say in music videos or in sports or in movies or TV. And we'd bring someone who's a BIPOC person to work on our business and commercials, which is strangely very, very, very centered around whiteness. And has been for a while. It's very difficult, I think, to move into commercials from any other part of the business. We've seen a lot of that changing over the years, but I think this program is really helping to facilitate a more open industry, one in which we sort of invest in other people from other parts of the industry rather than trying to build people from scratch. The agencies loved it, and Allie wanted to sort of speed it up, which is get more people on board for it faster. So she brought it to me, and I took it to the board at AICP and to our overall committee. And people just started mentioning it on their calls with their agents. Like, they're getting on a call to bid out a job. They're mentioning this program when people say, well, what are you guys doing for diversity? I'm sure you guys have experienced a lot of the sort of the buck passing of of the problem, which is like, well, I can't fix it right here, but maybe I can fix it on this. And so it's a little bit of that where the agencies are looking at us as the entity hiring lots of people all at once for a commercial, and we can change those people because those people are just people we hire for the commercial. They go away, and then we hire more people for a commercial. It's not like they're staffers, which might take a little more time for them, or things that are just that require more effort on their part necessarily. So this is an investment, and we think of it as a two-sided investment, an investment financially from the agency or the brand. In our case, we've gotten both agencies like White and Kennedy on board and 72 and Sunny, but we've also gotten big brands on board like Ford and McDonald's. So we've made it basically so it's very easy to implement. The overall issue is really there aren't a lot of rules. We made it really simple. You can take any job in the budget except for PA. We suggest producers and production staff because those people do a lot of staffing, and we find that when those jobs are diverse, the crews tend to be more diverse. That's just the way things work. People with diverse networks find diverse people, hire them, know them, and we bring them into our industry. And what the goal is really people working from other parts of the business. There's a lot of the jobs are the same. I'm sure you guys experience this maybe when you provide services for a TV show versus a commercial. It's in general, a lot of the things are exactly the same. But there's some language things, there's some sort of translation of expectations on each part of the business that are different. So what we're doing in this program is sort of bringing people in who might be producers on music videos, but who've never done commercials. But the logistics are the same, but the language and how we talk to our clients and how we manage our directors and how we facilitate the project is slightly different. So we're basically offering more like an apprentice program. I would not say this is like a mentor person you're climbing up the ranks. It's more like someone who's already doing the job and coming in and doing it with someone else in tandem, probably for a couple of jobs until you feel like they've really learned it. They don't need any more doubling. They're a person now you can hire. So we're seeing a fair amount of success, and I hate to use the word success, but we're seeing a lot of progress in people using it. Mostly because I think it's giving people the sort of boldness to expand their networks. And I try to remind people that I don't think the industry itself is intentionally exclusive. I think we tend to hire people we know. We tend to ask people we know when it's time to hire people if they know people, right? So our companies tend to reflect our personal networks, like people who we know personally and professionally, and people we've taken time to build relationships with. And to me, this program sort of offers a bit of incentive to expand that network. We've also hosted these monthly webinars called Commitment to Change, where we feature organizations that are building up the creative class across the industry, whether they be filmmakers or producers or DPs or just PAs training up and trying to get into production spaces. But we're featuring all these different organizations that find and cull talent across our industry, specifically so people have organizations they can reach out to for their staffing needs, so they can sort of start building the muscles of building new relationships. And that's really what Double the Line is mostly about, is getting ourselves to build the muscles to form new relationships, to create new working collaborations with people who are outside of our regular network to further diversify our industry. That's pretty much how it works.
Yeah.
And
Who pays for it, Tamitha? Who pays for the doubled position?
So the client pays for the double position. And we went back and forth about this. We actually had several conversations with APR, one of the bigger cost consulting agencies, around this idea. And really the idea is that there's a shared investment. So the financial investment comes from the client in this case, but the investment of time, skills, learning, teaching, implementing comes on the half of the production company. And that is actually like a very time consuming thing when you're in a very fast-paced environment, producing job after job, is really putting the onus on the production company to really build those relationships and really bring those people on board. So it's a financial investment for the client, and depending on the client, it could be both of them, right? If there's Facebook signed up, but they also had all their agencies on board. So if one of their agencies is Wieden and Kennedy, both Wieden and Kennedy and Facebook have a commitment, and it could go either way. Either one of them could pay for it, or both could.
Yeah, and you said before that you don't like to use the term whether it's successful or not, and that's something you and I had talked about. I think, so what's the reaction or the response been from both the clients, production companies, as well as participants?
So I found that production companies jumped right into it because it was super easy for them to implement. I don't want to say it was super easy. I want to say, depending on who you are and how you feel about having to take on more work or a thing, it could be super easy, right? It could be super easy if you also already have a network. So for example, like I come from the sort of sports and music video world and then sort of came to commercials later in life. So a lot of my earlier connections are from that universe. It's not as hard for me to translate or find people from that space, but for people who've never done that, it's a little more difficult. And we've gotten some great resources. We actually created a resource page for our members to do a lot of help them find a lot of the roles that they might be looking for in those spaces. And these are organizations or pages and places where people self-identify. So it's not like you have to go and be like, I'm looking for a Black person, but I don't want to say that I'm looking for, it's like you can very clearly say you're looking for a person of color, for a woman. And there are places where people self-identify, talk about their experience, post their resumes or links to their bios or LinkedIn pages or IMDb pages. And it's a really great resource. So it's gotten easier. And I would say that there's been a good amount of success. And what I like about it is it also gives people opportunity to try out people who might not get a shot. You know, I talked to someone recently who wanted to use a young woman as a DP on a car commercial. There are very few women on car commercial, you know, doing DP in car commercials. And he worked with a DP he's always worked with, who's done a ton of car commercials with him, and said, I'm interested in doing this thing. And could I bring this on board? He even involved the union, which is, you know, back and forth what we talked about so far, and 600 okayed it. And he said it went really well, and we just loved how much she was able to learn and to really start doing the work and building the career, the commercial career of someone else in the industry. And I think that is a really important part of this, is advocating, is getting, not only hiring people, but advocating for them, helping them find their next job in this industry. It's a big part of growing a career, period.
Yeah, and we got a request. Could you explain again how you find the participants, or how the participants can find out about the opportunities?
Oh, Andrew Cologne is already here in the chat, posting up links. Hi, Andrew. Andrew's on my committee and always super active. And he just posted a link. His committee was actually responsible for sourcing these talent resources. So that is where our side, we created this page for our members. And actually it's live. It's not a private page. It's not behind a wall of membership. Anyone can go use it. And it's a bunch of organizations we've looked at, we've vetted, we've had in our commitment to change, that provide different kinds of resources. I have a friend who is a ethnomusicologist at Juilliard, and her colleagues got together and put together a list of Black composers. And I said, do you mind if we use this as a resource, right? So there's a great list of resources for crew and lots of organizations you can work with to find the right people you need for your job. Oh, well, Jane's here too. Hi, Jane.
Yeah, and I'm reposting the link in the chat for all the attendees.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
then questions, people, if you're watching, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function, and questions will pop up, and I'll do my best to get those to Tabitha.
yeah, so I mean, we've been chatting. I've actually been trying to do more work following up with people who've been implementing it to find out what's working, what's not, what's been sticky. And so far, so good. There have been, you know, ideas around, you know, can we provide more structure, or give people tools for how they implement it? We have been very deliberately not doing those things because we feel like the industry already runs this way, which is, in order to build a career anywhere in this business, you have to work with people. People have to teach you things. It is very much a apprentice like industry. And we're just trying to continue that. Harry, you're asking me.
Could you tell us about the experience of a specific person, and how long has the program been working, and are you keeping track of like how many times you've done this?
Oh my gosh. So we are not keeping track of it. We are like, because they're just, so I will say to everyone, we've gone back and forth about this too. It's like, how do we quantify this? And we, as production companies, don't really need to. It's not like we're not measuring our progress. Some of us may be measuring their progress and success by quantifying. I am not, and maybe there are dozens and dozens of company like me that are not. Right? We're just trying to do the work. We're not worried as much about like what our numbers look like. We're just every time trying to make a commitment to do a thing. Now, however, agencies and cost consultants do care about this. So the new AICP bid form has actually space for this. There is a line that's double the line. It doesn't have any markup or anything on it. And that is so advertisers and agencies and cost consultants at the end of the year can pull that line from all their budgets and say, this is how much we invested, right? And this equaled XYZ bodies that were doubled across our jobs. We made it so they can count and we don't have to. So, so it's less about us needing to count. I think it's more about our commitment and our teams and really getting your whole team on board. What I like to tell people is like, you can't just throw this on people. You have to have a conversation. You have to find out who on your team is committed as you are to making some of these changes, because people are looking for things to do, but not really sure what or how, and have those conversations and say what it will look like for your company. And it's going to look different based on how everybody's company runs, and it shouldn't be boxed in. It should be flexible so people can make it work on jobs that have the budgets and like not force it on jobs that don't.
Yeah. And I see like for our group, which are manufacturers and rental companies, the specifics of something like this would be slightly different, but I think the thought behind it is, for me, it's what's important. I mean, because I came up from my personal experience in freelancing,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know anybody in the Atlanta market when I started working. So even for someone like me, not knowing someone, that was like a lot to prove, but I didn't have anything to prove other than just that I could do the job. And I have no idea how much harder it is for people of color or anyone or a woman, people not that don't look like me. I
Yeah.
haven't, I can't speak to that because I don't know how much harder it would have been. So using the same kind of model, I think, is intriguing for our group, and hopefully people will be thinking about this is how can we do something? How can we be, like you said, it's a conscious effort
Mm-hmm.
to give people opportunities, I
Yeah.
think.
So Harry's question is, have I had a chance to talk to participants about how they feel about it? And could you tell us about that? So no is the answer. I've not yet had a chance. I actually have a couple of calls scheduled I'm on vacation next week. And I had
Spring break.
a couple of calls after that scheduled to talk to some people who have been part of the program and sort of how it goes. This question is not sticky. It's not intended to be sticky, but I think there's sort of an underlying thing, which I addressed actually on a call with a client who wanted to implement this across their network. And they were saying, well, how do we have these conversations? How do we get people who want to do this without sounding like, gross, like, hey, come work for me as this double the line person? And I just said, I think the way we approach the conversation matters. So it's not like you're trying to just grant someone some magical favor. It's really like, I love your work. I think you're really, really talented. But I also know my client is very particular about the kind of DPs we hire. I would love to get you in the mix of doing these kinds of commercials. And I have a DP that I work with all the time, or I have a producer I work with all the time who will work with you on this project, and bringing them in that way and just say like, I really want to work with you. It shouldn't feel like a charitable thing, because these are people with real skills. They're not people with no experience that you're just helping out. You're basically taking someone who's quite skilled and experienced in a different part of the industry and bringing them into commercials or offering them a different kind of opportunity. So it might be an incredible music video producer who's been doing like really great work, incredible music videos, working with great directors, and you want them to start doing commercials. And you can say, I love your style. I love the music videos you've been doing. I'd love to get you on our like producer roster. And I want you to start working with our producers to figure out how to do commercials so we can start working with you. So I think a lot of that sort of, and that may not be the underlying, Harry, on your question. That's been a thing that's come up often, which is how do we approach the conversation? How do we not feel weird about offering this opportunity to people. And I just also remind people that there are tons of people signing up to get work by self-identifying, by knowing that people are looking for people like them who have experience, and I don't think they're going to be offended.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then is it so all crew, any crew position?
We've been telling people to stick as closely as possible to the producer roles and the production roles, specifically because there are lots of nuances around union pieces and around navigating that. In the case of the DP that we chatted with, the person they brought in was already in the union, just not in the DP category. So 600 was actually fine with it, worked out really well. They had a conversation. You want to bring someone, if you bring them in from another category, you want to bring them in on the union side and have a conversation with the union. So you don't want to just bring in a non-union person to do a union role. You do want to have those things if you're going to use a union category.
I was muted myself. So producer, production manager, production coordinator, you said you are trying to stay away from PA positions, correct?
Yes, we are trying to stay away from PA positions. I think there's parts of our industry where we just need more representation that I would love to see. Some of the union roles I'd eventually love to see more representation are obviously the DP category, the gaffer category. Like I've met one female gaffer ever, Mary V. Like, I mean, the only one I've ever met. Art directors, production designers, that category is certainly something I'd love to see more people of color doing. And I think there is hope for it in the near future. I think the unions are also looking to diversify, but basically the conversations still need to be had about the how and how we work together to make it work. And some people are straight up going and having those conversations because of their projects or of people they're interested in already working with, and it's working. I haven't heard any blowback just yet, but so far so good. And yes, line producers are also one of the categories that I think need a lot of work. So yeah.
Yeah, being like from my perspective here at the stage, I think a lot of times people tend to, I see on jobs when the crews are on the stages, people tend to think very specifically like this is our talent as a person of color, so that's when we have a wardrobe stylist. It's like it seems like this would be a good opportunity to like, no, it's, people, wardrobe stylists know how to do wardrobe.
Yeah. Yeah. And that happens all the time where people are concerned about those things when the talent might be concerned about those. And with good reasons. I feel like at least across movies, that's been the driving factor for a lot of diversity across movies. I know
Hmm.
several crew people who've been on really big films just because the actors in the films have been like, no, you're going to have to do better than this. Like, and it's contractually obligated them to do so. And I think that's okay, but it shouldn't have to be the case. And I do feel like our industry is at a big impasse and that there are lots of companies really delving in, really committing to doing the work. And it's not just Double the Line, it's the mentor program and it's the agency guidelines and it's all the resources that we're sort of putting together and the commitment to featuring new organizations that can help people find the right people for the roles. So there's definitely a fervor that I haven't seen before in our industry and a real passion that's being driven by a lot of people who are serious about their commitment.
That makes sense. And that's what it takes. It takes, like you said, it takes someone willing to take the chance or willing to make the conscious effort to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so it's really great. And I think this will give us in our group some food for thought to figure out how we can adapt this, I think, to our specific industry too. So
Yeah.
do we have any other questions from the attendees? We should put the link in the chat for, if we don't have that, just for any of the AICP stuff that you've already done, I think.
Yeah, we can definitely share the commitment to change webinars, which are also really good. There's some great organizations we feature there, and they talk about the different types of work. And we go across kind of across the industry. We feature people who are creating agency creatives, who are really working with people to really understand the agency model. We're working with people who are creating the next wave of cinematographers and are really creating space for those people. Um, we've obviously featured like the street lights and ghetto film school and those people who are like the introductory level. So there's some really, really great organizations. And what I really like about the commitment to change is it kind of gives you a lot of different things to look at and gives you enough options to something that really drives you or that you feel quite passionate about that you can really delve into, that you can really go into as you know what, I love this thing, this idea really sort of speaks to me, resonates with me, and I want to be more active in that. And they all welcome that. They all are totally welcoming of your input, of your investment, of your time. And there's just so much our members have been contributing. And I, think that's a really great place to also start if you're looking for organizations to both sponsor or to get familiar with, or just to find candidates for programs that you might have, your own internships or your own paid positions. I think rental houses are a great place to start when you want to work in the camera department, when you want to understand how things work. It's like, well, where else would I have free access to all the equipment? It's like, that's a great place to start out.
Yeah. So we have a question. Who instigates it? Who's the first? Who does it? Does the agency say we're doubling the line, and the production company gets on board, or?
Well, it depends. It goes both ways. So I know a lot of companies now are sending them back with their bids, like sort of like green the bid. Here are things that we subscribe to and that we want to support on all our jobs. And there have been probably a half a dozen companies I know straight up who are just sending that with every bid they send, trying to get the company to sign up. And then there are agencies or companies that are already doing it. What we've told our members is that we list all those like supporters on our page, on the Double the Line webpage. So anyone who's committed at the very top levels, we've put them on our page, and we've also linked to the people at their companies who are responsible for implementing the program. So let's say you're bidding a job with Facebook and the producer you're working with doesn't know about Double Line, has never heard of it, and you're talking about it like, no, really, Facebook signed up. There's an email address for the person at Facebook who can facilitate the internal conversation, and we'll get that working for you. So that they have been, that's a part of being listed as a sponsor on the page, is really making sure there's a direct link to someone who can execute on the program.
That's great. I put a couple of those specific links for the supporters, and
yeah, perfect.
Oh, cool. Well, anything else, Tabitha, you want to say? I mean, I think this is
I'm really
been great.
and like that this part of the industry is also working to make some changes and to look at themselves as companies and make commitments, and also hear about what the rest of us are doing. I think it's really encouraging to know that all parts of our business, even the companies we're renting all of our equipment and all of our just needs that support us, are also looking at their own commitments. It just feels very, very like a 360, which is fantastic. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it all takes a little bit of step. So I'd like to thank everyone for taking time this afternoon and put your thinking caps on and start thinking, if you're in the rental business, how we can do this and how we can do it better, possibly,
Yes.
So I really appreciate everyone, and thank you for attending today, and thank you again, Tabitha.
Thank you.